Northstar here with another video for those of you watching. I don't know why this game gets so much in the way of views. Um, this is an opportunity for me to practice some thoughts, speaking them into a recording where there's a little bit different pressures than just rehearsing for a mirror or such. Things that I'm probably going to do a Northstar Talks politics video in about a second. But also, I'll take a moment to mention my Let's Plays. I've got a Citizen Sleeper one going on. That's, I think, the one that I forgot to mention last time and I couldn't remember what ones I've got ongoing. I'll be coming back to that soon. Vampire, of Orion, Potioncraft, Rise of Nations, Hearts Iron 4, including a multiplayer one. Age of Wonders 3, sometimes I stream some multiplayer, or rather record multiplayer games and put them up on YouTube. Sessions, it's been a bit with those because the people I play with them, well, one that I've been doing, he's sick with the flu because he doesn't like needles and he couldn't actually ask his doctor. He could have found out that there is a non-needle variant of the flu vaccine most years where they can give it nasally. It doesn't exist every year, if I'm not mistaken, but he hadn't even heard of such a thing, so he clearly hadn't asked around to find out the alternatives. I hate when people do that because it's woefully irresponsible. If you don't get your vaccine, you put other people's lives in danger. And because you become a transmission vector. Think of yourself as a giant freaking mosquito spreading malaria, or flea spreading the plague, except you're spreading the flu. You do not get your vaccine because it puts not just people you come in contact with in danger, but people they come in contact with and people they come in contact with. People who come in contact with people they come in contact with, you get the idea. And usually it's just a small number of people won't get vaccines that make the difference between being able to achieve herd immunity to the flu and not. It's a relatively small subset of the population. If everyone got vaccinated, it wouldn't be able to spread. But because there's always these stubborn holdouts who don't even look into alternatives. Oh, well. Well, the guy, he's not a terrible person. It's just he lives in a toxic society that does not emphasize doing the right thing enough, and so even relatively good people can end up doing selfish shit like this because they don't live in a society that encourages them to do better. So that's my take on it. Maybe I'm just trying to make excuses but I really think people would generally do better, good and bad people alike, and especially good people like this guy, if they just lived in a society that enabled them to. And that goes something that I was talking about politics video. We live in a society that doesn't uplift people, doesn't help them do their best, and in fact actively oppresses them. Any of you who live in the United States who think you live in a free country, take it from another American whose eyes have been opened to this shit. You do not. You're freaking delusional. We live in a system that imprisons more people per capita and total than any other country on earth. We live in a system where if you become sick, disabled, like I did, you can have to deal with bureaucrats who have been, while many came in as well-meaning people, have been forced into doing bad things until they eventually become corrupted or leave or just package their soul into only being a good person when they get home from work. So to speak, that is, they create a mental separation between being a good person at home and doing nasty stuff at work, which isn't really being a good person, but that goes along with being corrupted. But they might be outside of work. Just I deal with applying for a state welfare program, being told, oh, you have 30 days when you apply to do these forms, but then we'll send you a list of the documents you need, but the list wasn't sent. The person even acknowledges they sent late. Then when it arrives, it says that I have to the end of the month, which would be like 15 days from when I had applied and when I had this phone conversation with the person. So they completely freaking like lied about the deadlines. The phone or the form is lying. The checklist, and that leaves now it's like the 26th of January. 5 days and get stuff that includes a birth certificate, which I was born on the other side of the country from where I am. I can't easily get a birth certificate in just 5 days, and every time I get a copy, it seems some government agency holds on to it when I send it in or something. Or, I mean, in the past, I've applied to the military a few times. I was healthy. I was trying to become a military physician. Just get a foot in the door earlier. And yes, the military is an apparatus of oppression, does bad stuff. I had hoped to try and get some of the young people who send the military alive in one piece. Was originally my intention. I realized that even is not necessarily always even feasible with our systems. So then just get some familiarity with the medical system. I was going to do medical service corps in the Army, which can't really hurt many people, and then try to become a military physician. The idea was simply assuming that even doing capable leadership that treats the men's lives as important is not feasible. At least provide good medical care so that people get shot up have a better chance of making it home alive. I think that a hospital can do better always, kind of thing. Sorry, I'm thinking of a stupid name of focus from outside. Even a hospital can do better, but yeah, that's that was my goal. But so I know that's where some of my beer certificates went, was with these stupid recruiters, and then getting passed on to the medical clearance and paperwork in government offices, and just disappearing. I hope there's not one of them didn't get diverted from where it was supposed to be. I was worried someone may have stolen a copy, and with how many have disappeared in government offices. But this nonsense, and then the people can't be reached by phone, and then when they leave voicemails, they're almost intentionally vague. We sent you information. How? By email? Something in the phone conversation recorded, so I know what the person said. They implied they were going to send something by email, but I didn't get anything by email. And it turns out they sent something by snail mail, which of course took like almost 2 weeks to arrive, which is unbelievable, by the way. That used to be postal service was so much faster than that. But ever since Trump put his person in and sabotaged the post office, I've been seeing letters sometimes take weeks to arrive when someone sends them. That didn't used to happen. That's a new thing in the past few years. But yeah, we live in a system that doesn't uplift people with a disability, and the welfare systems, and these systems are perpetually underfunded and meant to humiliate and stress and bully the people who are most vulnerable in society. We do not take care of the orphans, the widows, the sick, the children, all the groups that, if you're a Christian, the Bible tells you to take care of. We fucking abandon these people. We have more people in prison than any country on earth, including China. By the way, anyone who thinks, China is this authoritarian system, you're more likely to end up in prison and to spend a long time in prison in the United States than China. China has a fraction of the prison population of the U.S., even though it's got like 3 times the number of people in the country, because no country on earth is as oppressive with its police force as the United States. The only country that ever came close to giving a run for the money was the Soviet Union, and even they had a smaller per capita prison population. That was partly because even though people went to prison a lot, the prison sentences tended to be shorter, harsher but shorter. People would go and serve in Siberia and get frostbite and lose fingers and toes a lot of the time. But the prison sentences were only about 7 years, whereas the same crime might get you 14 years or more in the United States. So, I'd rather probably go to Siberia and lose a toe than lose that many years of my life. and um, statistics on things like recidivism show that their prison system was actually better than the United States one. And for a country of their wealth level, they actually had pretty good prison survival rates. When I talk about like Siberia, I'm talking about the 50s, the 30s, the 40s, ignoring prisoners of war during World War II, which had terrible survival rates, but those were German Nazi soldiers. You might consider it a war crime that they subjected the Nazi prisoners to such horrendous conditions, but it skews the statistics on the Soviet prison system, the gulags. Their survival rates were actually pretty good, and better than the United States at a similar level of economic development. And actually, you had a better chance of surviving a prison sentence in a Soviet gulag than the U.S. prison system, because the prison sentences were shorter. So even though you had a higher chance of dying each year, you had fewer years you had to serve. You were likely to emerge, as I said, without fingers or toes, but you were much more likely to emerge alive instead of getting shanked by another prisoner in a long prison sentence, or getting HIV in prison, because a lot of people get HIV or tuberculosis in the U.S. prison system due to unsanitary conditions, and like getting raped in prison. That happens. And that gives people HIV, unsurprisingly, and then they die because of terrible prison health care for something they didn't choose. That happened because of being thrown in prison for often reasons to do with racial injustice and prison sentences that are excessively harsh, and cops framing people because they do that. Yeah. And then they die. You do not live in a free country if you live in the United States. It is far more oppressive than if you were to, say, go to Western Europe and live in one of the social democracies there. And not only that, the United States does not respect the freedom of other countries. People in especially the third world are bullied and forced at the threat of being bombed to do what the U.S. government and the CIA want them to do. CIA can't really do things inside the U.S. borders, but they fuck with everywhere else in the world. So we don't respect the freedom of any other country. We don't respect the freedom of our own people. We are not the good guys. I'd argue the world would be better off if the Soviet Union had won the Cold War. Not that they were perfect. In fact, they were deeply flawed and did some bad things. But it's not that they weren't necessarily even evil. It's that they were maybe less evil than what the United States has turned out to be. The U.S. set the bar on the freaking floor. And within the dominance of the Soviet system, there was the room for other countries like Cuba to do their own thing, pave their own path, and create a system that ended up being better. The Cuban system, of course, eventually banned the participation of the Communist Party in the local elections they have, because like most communist systems, they have mass meetings that select candidates. Unlike many historical communist systems, Cuba made it illegal for the Communist Party to endorse a candidate, so that these mass meetings became more democratic. They're like town hall style meetings, and they had them in the Soviet Union too. The only problem is when you have 15 people running and no one knows who they are, because even in the Soviet Union, people don't always know who their neighbors are or who lives, 4 blocks down the road. What ended up happening is people would just vote for the party told them to endorse, especially because the elections were not secret ballot, so everyone knew who you were voting for, because it was a show of hands type election. There was a secret ballot election, but that was to confirm the choice of the mass meeting. So you could have a situation where people got bullied into voting for someone at the mass meeting, and then they would turn around and reject that person by secret ballot on the actual election day. There would only be one candidate that day, but you could vote yes, no, and that did happen sometimes. And if someone got rejected, there was often investigations to find out if something had fishy had gone on at the mass meeting. Sometimes it would turn out a member of the Communist Party exerted excessive influence or such, although what the Soviet Union's definition of excessive influence might be is maybe not a definition that was broad enough, strict enough. I don't know, you get the idea. There was some attempt to have popular participation democracy, but it was flawed. But Cuba did its own thing, because the Soviet Union didn't go bullying every country in the world to conform to its exact idea of doing things the way the United States does. It was content just to control Eastern Europe, areas that used to be part of the Russian Empire before World War One, which is, not great, but they limited their domination to just that area and let most of the rest of the world do whatever they wanted. Even and tried to term communist, but didn't try and carefully control everything they did. And like, you don't see the Soviet Union trying to tell Vietnam or North Korea actually, or the People's Republic of China, or Cuba, or Burkina Faso in its brief socialist period before their leader was assassinated, or Chile. You don't see them trying to tell, or Bolivia in its socialist period, or Paraguay. You don't see any of these countries being told what to do by the Soviet Union the way the U.S. does. The U.S. often accused countries of doing that, but that was pure projection because the CIA was telling in the State Department we're bullying countries, so they assumed that the Soviets doing the same, or they would at least make the accusation because it would make it harder to accuse the U.S. Yeah, not a free country. That's the point. That I'd have to refine how I'm going to say this for my political video, but it's a system that's only become more degenerate over time as we no longer have the Soviet Union to pose a serious rival to us. And we've shown our true colors, what we would have probably always been if not for that. If not for the Cold War, the U.S. would have been as bad as it is now 50 years ago or 30 years ago. So, anyways, wish you all the best. Take care of each other. Be kind to yourselves. May you always find a guiding star to lead you home. Adieu.